Today, we're talking about people watching and also people watching you. I love people watching. Nothing better to sit in a cafe and observe what's happening around you. What is it that you're learning? What is it that you're seeing? What are the insights that you can gather about human behaviour? To me, the world can never be boring when there is so much to learn about us as humans and how we interact with other people. If you're interested in taking this a step further, there's even a handy guide. So Professor Susan Krauss Whitbourne from the University of Massachusetts has developed that guide. And based on psychology, what she suggests is that there are 5 areas to focus on: identity, self-esteem, emotional state, agreeableness, or what we would call niceness, and extraversion. Now, of course, you don't want your people watching to become laden with judgment. And you need to be conscious that they're just your observations. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it necessarily wrong. And your observations, though, they're filtered through your brain, your lens of experience. And so they're coloured by how you see the world, by your assumptions, your perspectives on how things should be. What's interesting though, as research has shown through countless studies, we can change how we behave when we think we're being watched. The classic study of this, and if you've ever done any HR studies or studies into management theory, it's something that you will have likely learned in the past. And it was what was called the Hawthorne effect, and were studies that were done back in the 1920s and early 1930s. And these studies revealed that employee performance improved when they were being observed by the researchers and the supervisors. Now, it was called the Hawthorne effect because the studies were taken at a plant that was the Western Electric's Hawthorne plant. It's a really interesting study to dig into if you're interested in understanding what the observation and the impact that had on how people behaved at work. Now, what's important to note in later times, some of the findings from that research, certainly the magnitude of the impact, has been challenged and criticised by subsequent research. However, there is further research that supports the contention that we can change our behaviour when we're being watched. There was a study of medical staff which found that compliance with washing hands increased by more than 55% when people knew that they were being watched. A different group of scientists actually found that even just having posters with human eyes was enough, these were posters that were in rooms, was enough to change a person's behaviour. Another study has found that we make more pro-social choices, so choices that are connected, interested in benefiting others when we believe that we're being watched. Now, this also plays out when money's involved. And in this particular situation, the researchers were using what was called is a classic economic game, where the participants are able to allocate an amount of money between themselves and someone else who is playing in the game. And in this situation, one person in the pair gets to decide the split. They can either take all of it or any amount to that full amount. Next, they communicate that to a third party who communicates that to the participant that they're playing with. That other participant can reject the offer. Now, if they reject the offer, both of those two participants get nothing. There's multiple rounds in the game. People swap from being the person who offers, the person who's in the role of the acceptance, and the person who's in the role of communicating the offer. What the researchers found was that people behaved more nicely when they knew that they were being watched. And what that meant in practice is that the people who were accepting the offers, if they knew they were being watched, they were more likely in subsequent rounds to accept the offer. But if they didn't know they were being watched, they were more likely to not accept offers in subsequent rounds, even though that the offer that was being made was at a similar level to what they had offered when they were playing the role of the offerer. But are we always nice when we're being watched? Do we always change our behaviour? There's interesting ways to check this out. The CEO of Charles Schwab, Walt Bettinger, has a unique practice, and this was reported some time ago in the New York Times. And he explains that when he's doing an interview, so an interview for a role, he'll often do it over breakfast, and he'll get to the venue early. And he gets to the venue early because what he wants to do is set up a scenario. And so he sets it up in a way where he talks to the waitstaff and he says, look, when the person orders their meal, I want you to then deliver the meal, and I want the order to be messed up. Because what he wants to do is see how the person responds. He wants to see how they handle adversity. He wants to see if they get upset, if they get frustrated. Because for him, that gives an insight into the person's character. And also, as he says, it's another way to get a look inside their heart rather than inside their head. Now, if you were to follow much of the research from social scientists that I've outlined earlier, you would think that the person would be on their best behaviour. Doesn't always turn out to be the case, because we can react instinctually, particularly if we're under stress and pressure. Human behaviour, we're not entirely consistent, and context and circumstances matter. I remember many years ago sitting in a cafe earlier in the day, and this person who doesn't know me, and I at that point don't know them, is starting to conduct a performance feedback conversation with one of their team members. Later that day, I was on a panel, and after I was on the panel, who should come up to me and start chatting to me but the person who had been having that performance conversation with their team member. My question to them, and I was being perhaps a little bit cheeky, was, hey, how did your performance conversation go earlier today? She was, as you could expect, a little bit shocked at my question. It's a reminder, we never know who's looking. We never know who's watching us. And so the question to always ask yourself is, who is watching? And when they're watching and seeing me and seeing my behaviour, are they seeing the best of me? Are they seeing who I want them to see, the real me? Or are they actually seeing aspects of me that I really don't want them to see? With that, the choice is in your hands. Have a great week.